Welcome to my favorite place to be on the first Tuesday of every month. This is Loose Lips, in case you were curious or, just wandered into the wrong place. And I have some good news and bad news. So, on the normal first Tuesday of every month, Loose Lips is a news-themed literary reading series. We invite like 4, 5, maybe even 6 of Orlando's best writers, any genre, any style, to do what they do as long as it's inspired by current events. That's our particular gift, and fuck you to the writers of Orlando. And somehow, y'all keep showing up, no matter how bad the news gets, because the writing only seems to get better, which I'm very thankful for. But tonight, bonus kids, you're all about to be famous. Because I work so hard booking readers for this thing. Luckily, we happen to be friends with the finest literary podcast in town, The Drunken Odyssey. That's an applause line. This is official shit. There's bookmarks up here and pins. I think that means you can take them. I don't know. I'm going to award prizes for the person who does it most surreptitiously up here. But you will get to know this podcast very well by the end of the night if you don't already, and something tells me you do. So John King is curating our list of readers tonight, and I'm very, very happy for that. Not only because I'm lazy, but because he has extremely good taste. And let's be honest, his all-stars are kind of all-stars too. So the bad news is again, you're about to be famous. Everybody listens to The Drunken Odyssey. You can no longer plausibly deny to your boss that you may or may not participate in some woke liberal fuckfest every month. So don't blame us if you get dragged into HR, on Wednesday. Like, is this you laughing at a limerick about Charlie Kirk? I had nothing to do with it. I don't vet anything here. Normally I don't, but even less so tonight. So, my name's Tod, I should say. I'm to blame for that much, at least. So, if nothing else, you can blame me for the shitty introductions that I will now be doing. That's how I'm earning my free drinks tonight. So, if you'd like to welcome up our first reader, Fred Lambert. Before I even told you anything about him, Fred is a fictional character who appears in Walt Disney Pictures' animated film, The Little Mermaid. Voiced by actress Pat Carroll, Fred is a villainous Sicilian sea witch who offers mermaid princess Ariel a temporary opportunity to become human so that she may earn the love of Prince Eric within 3 days. How dare you? However, Fred is determined to sabotage Ariel's chances in order to usurp King Triton's position as ruler of the oceans. I hope he is successful at that. But in the meantime, he's going to read some shit. Fred Lambert!
Back when I was a younger man, I used to say that I was going to throw a keg party when Dick Cheney died. Like a lot of people at the time, I didn't think an American politician could get any worse. The war in Iraq, which Cheney basically started, personally profited from, and which he defended to his dying day, had become the great trauma of my life. Dead bodies, exploding villages, screaming women and children, the works. I thought about it incessantly, at least once an hour, which caused me lots of problems, professionally and legally. It made me a strange, if not difficult, person to be around. At 21, I had come to view myself as a stormtrooper in the service of an evil empire, cannon fodder in an unjust war against an army of rebels. So the memes equating Cheney to Emperor Palpatine were on point, in my opinion. But they didn't come remotely close to what this man truly deserved as punishment for his crimes, which resulted in hundreds of thousands of deaths and untold suffering, including my own. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Fred wasn't drafted. He volunteered for it. And you'd be right. I did volunteer, approximately 2 weeks before 9/11. I was 17 years old, still in high school. My mother had to sign a permission slip. In those days, outside of Dan Quayle being a dipshit at a spelling bee and Al Gore taking some credit for the internet, I didn't think about vice presidents. I barely even thought about the president. I was a gangly pothead with masculine identity issues, still high on the Freon fumes of movies like Saving Private Ryan and shows like Band of Brothers. I really believed in the self-flating mythology that sprung out of our victory in World War II. This notion that because America was once a force for good, it would always be a force for good. That the liberation of death camps gave the United States a pass to use its military however the fuck it wanted for the next half century. So long as we slapped a freedom sticker on it, every mass casualty event we caused from then on out was going to be just as noble and necessary as taking on the Nazis in Imperial Japan. Maybe I just trusted that my country would do the right thing. So yeah, I volunteered. 9/11 happened and I went to war in Iraq. But even at 19, training in Kuwait, preparing to cross the border, I was informed enough to know that Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. I'd heard the talk of WMD, but even that didn't scan. Pakistan had nukes. How come we weren't going after them? Why Iraq? I remember comparing it to a blind punch. We had turned around after being struck from behind, and we threw a haymaker at the obvious culprit, Al-Qaeda cells in Afghanistan, and by extension, the Taliban. But then we saw an old rival, the face of Saddam Hussein smirking and laughing at us, and so we knocked him the fuck out too. As a young, dumb Marine, it was the only way I could make sense of the situation. I didn't know what Halliburton was. I didn't know it was the world's second largest oil giant, or that Cheney, before stepping down to become the nation's 46th vice president, had been its CEO. I didn't know that Halliburton had received a no-bid contract to rebuild Iraq's oil infrastructure and supply U.S. bases in the country. I didn't know that Cheney was still financially connected to the company, which was set to make a windfall of at least $39.5 billion off the war, more than $61 billion in today's money when adjusted for inflation. I didn't even know who the fuck Dick Cheney was, because the vice president wasn't supposed to be memorable. He was supposed to be a protuberance, a second-string quarterback who rarely made important decisions or even got a chance to take the field. The name might have rang a bell, but I thought about him as much as I thought about Karl Rove or Paul Wolfowitz, for that matter. Like many a smooth-brained American, I felt the president was the only name and face that counted, and George W. Bush was talking a big game about freedom, about the liberation of the Iraqi people. When throngs of Iraqis greeted us in Baghdad with signs that said, "Thank you, USA," thousands of them waving and cheering and blowing kisses, chanting slogans like "Good, good Bush," I was inclined to believe we had done a noble thing. Maybe we had come to this country to knock off a dictator. Maybe we had done it out of the goodness of our hearts. Maybe we really were the altruistic defenders of human rights that we claimed to be in the wake of World War II. It was an enchanting thought. I'd been brought up to believe it. Of course, those versed in the history of the war know this honeymoon phase didn't last long. Abuse, incompetence, mismanagement. Cheering crowds made way for angry riots. "Thank you, Mistar" became "Allahu Akbar." Signs of gratitude were traded in for sniper rifles and IEDs. 2 tours and countless near-death experiences later, I came home and partied. But no matter how much I drank, no matter how many drugs I consumed, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I needed some context. I needed to know why this had happened, because the narratives I'd encountered weren't making sense. So, I hit the library, did some research. You know what they say about curiosity killing the cat. Well, in this case, it obliterated my entire fucking worldview. The more I learned about Dick Cheney, the more I associated him with every festering, bloated corpse I encountered over there. Whether I saw his smirking, bespectacled face, I thought, this is the man who tried to kill me. This is the man who killed my friends. So, yeah, I was looking forward to the death of Dick Cheney. I really was going to throw a kegger for the occasion. But a lot has happened since the war, and to put it lightly, our understanding of what makes a good or bad president, or vice president for that matter, has changed. When it came to shitting on the Constitution, the Cheney-Bush team used to be the GOAT. Since then, Donald Trump and his lot have said, hold my beer. They're probably committing a war crime in the Caribbean as we speak. It's gotten so exhaustingly bad that when Cheney died last month at the ripe old age of 84, I didn't even care. His demise was supposed to represent the end of an era. Instead, it was a minor footnote in the ongoing devolution of American politics, a reminder of how disappointing this country has been my entire adult life, and how much worse it will continue to be. So while I won't be tapping a keg for the occasion, I will have a drink now, with all of you, and I'll offer a sad and fruitless toast to the heart disease that plagued Richard Bruce Cheney for more than 50 years. It took far too long to do us any good. I love the slow clap. All right, I've got like 2 minutes left, so I'm going to slip in a poem here, which is an incredibly drastic change of tenor. In the spirit of the Marine Corps birthday, the 250th Marine Corps birthday, which was last month, which is technically news. All right, I'm going to read you this poem that I wrote in Rochelle Hurt's class. Watch me as you lie there under burlap sacks just like a hunter, armed and ready as I wonder about the sound of rolling thunder. Put me in your rifle sights. Those who live are those who fight. War is called a frightful blunder, but in my mind it's rolling thunder. Put your finger on the trigger as our shapes get closer, bigger. Click the safety, lick your lips, blink your eyelids, feel the tips of your fingers and your toes, of your earlobes and your nose. Feel the fright and feel the wonder of the sound of rolling thunder. Now we cross the bridge, the water, heart is beating, faster, hotter. Now there is no going back. The time has come to attack. No such thing as wrong or right. Those who die are those who fight. Now it's time to put us under. Fire and steel and rolling thunder. Pull the trigger and we duck, shouting shit and screaming fuck. We lie on line, returning fire, putting down the kind of ire that knows there's no such thing as luck. Only blood and guts and muck, and that's the sound that people wonder when they think of rolling thunder. When we push through where you lie, shooting corpses, active eyes, greenest grass, fixed positions, murderous dispositions. Remember, this is what you wanted. Hunters who become the hunted, killing us or standing by, dying where you chose to lie. And as we close, you lie there still, out of ammo, out of will. And now your skull is blown asunder, and that's the sound of rolling thunder. Thank you.
Our second one is Rachel Tillman, a fictional character and the main antagonist of Disney's The Lion King franchise. She is introduced in the 1994 animated film as the younger, envious brother of Mufasa, the ruler of the Pride Lands, originally first in line to the throne. Rachel is abruptly replaced by Mufasa's newborn son, Simba. Damn. Enraged, she devises a plot to usurp the throne by leading an army of hyenas and betraying both Mufasa and Simba. After killing Mufasa, Rachel manipulates Simba into believing she's to blame, prompting Simba to flee into exile. There were several spoiler alerts that should have come before that. Luckily, she's reading something new. Would you all please welcome Rachel Tillman?
That is one hard act to follow. That was incredible. On a lighter note, I would like to bring everyone back to a particular family of four enjoying a Thanksgiving dinner. So this is a tale of Thanksgiving. Despite the considerable millennia spent living, working, and generally being themselves in all incarnations and obligations, the four had never celebrated Thanksgiving, not really and not properly. Sometimes they dined out at whatever Michelin-starred restaurant was in the vicinity or ordered from one of the better pizza places in town. Famine was at her most subdued on this day, and the least herself, which fortunately for everyone simply meant she was at her most human, if such a thing were possible. However, the past 2 years had asked much of them, flung them to all corners of the globe, and shown whoever had eyes to see them in their peak form and all of the powers that came with it. So when famine and war suggested a real, honest-to-goodness Thanksgiving Day with all the trimmings, plus the company of Death's mortal page and their distant cousin, Jesus Christ, the Son of God, and the Blessed Mary, pestilence and death were happy to indulge her. War also thought it might be edifying for Alexei the page to have a genuine American Thanksgiving. He had joined them for bellinis and caviar and the best Wagyu beef, so why not turkey and stuffing? The famous cousin would bring 2 great bottles of his best red wine and his famous 7 fish and loaves pie, wrapped in a flaky pastry casing. Famine made a list, assigned the shopping, and clapping her hands together, made a beeline for the china cabinet. 3 weeks later, Pestilence is trying to pipe cream onto yet another pie in what she hopes is in an artistic fashion. Behind her is the ambient bustle of the kitchen and the faint chime of War and Alexei setting the table and organizing the drinks cart. The sideboard is already heaving with various dishes, and from the kitchen, Famine is shouting, "Oh my God, the potatoes!" Ode to joy rings through the house, once, twice. It's the doorbell. "Alexei, darling, can you get that?" sings Famine, who is pulling gleaming rolls from the second oven. "Oh, my Father in heaven, you have really outdone yourselves." The man beyond the open oven door is handsome, with a dark, deep olive complexion, thick black curls with humor in the large brown eyes. Jesus is semi-formal, and he is holding a huge glass dish heaving with fragrant pastry and filling. Behind him, Alexei is holding 2 huge bottles of wine. "Cousin!" Soon there are hugs, a few air kisses, seats shuffle, and napkins are pulled out and placed on laps. Death looks at the spread, slightly concerned and also very impressed. Famine's culinary frenzy has given them roast turkey, a silky gravy, stuffing, 2 kinds of potatoes, 3 kinds of vegetable dishes, rolls, salad, deviled eggs, canned and homemade cranberry sauce, butternut squash soup, and 5 kinds of pie, plus wine and various drinks. There's a cheese platter, chocolates to go with coffee, and cigarettes in a silver box for later. And Death wonders who took up smoking. "We're going to have leftovers for days. We don't even eat this much in a year. I mean, we don't need to," says Death, not wanting to be ungrateful, and fills his plate. "It really is wonderful, Famine. Really, I am honored to be welcomed into your house and at your table." Jesus pours more wine and ladles mashed potatoes next to a pile of green beans. Once plates are full, drinks poured, and grace said by Alexei, there is a companionable silence and the gentle din of the hungry but the well-mannered. Midway through the meal, Famine gently taps her baccarat drinking glass with a long, long varnished nail. It sounds like ice cracking over a lake. "I thought we might say something that we're grateful for this year," chimes Famine. "I know we all feel that way in the abstract, but given the year we've had and how we've grown as a family in this century, is there anything specific that you would like to share?" Cousin Jay, did you want to go first? Sorry. Jesus washes down some cranberry sauce with wine and clears his throat. "Well, I am thankful to be here with all of you. You know, it's hard for us to keep in touch, and we don't always see eye to eye, but I love you guys, and I am just so grateful to be sprung from that Houston detention facility. Thank you. Death and Pestilence, you did me a solid. Alexei, great job. Excellent horsemanship. That jump over 20 feet of barbed wire, very impressive." Alexei lifted his fork in thank you as Death and Pestilence toasted the adventurers with freshly, mysteriously refilled glasses. Jesus had decided to come back after all, and in keeping with the vibe of the donkey and Jerusalem, had decided on a low-key entrance aiming for the accessible and the merciful instead of the bombastic and the showy. He arrived barefoot in his signature human outfit of a crisp white button-down and the Levi's loose fit in a light wash. He decided to ditch the Birkenstocks as last minute. It was a bit too on the nose. Jesus had seen the suffering of his people, the further in their faith. He pondered their confusion, and he longed to release them from despair, to plant the seeds of hope in their barren hearts. And fueled by the depth of their love, found himself walking along the road just outside of Santa Fe. Border Patrol hadn't taken too kindly to him identifying as Jesus, the Son of God, Light of the World, Son of Mary, Most High, the Way, the Truth, and the Light, and shoved him with 12 other men in a van going 200 miles east. Further declarations of divinity had been met with a few punches, a mild tasing, and 3 good shoves from a portly masked gentleman who said that he and only he was in charge. He thought about performing a minor miracle, but was distracted by the red-faced blonde wielding a clipboard who stank of cigarettes, who shouted for his name, country of origin, date of birth, and what kind of accent was that anyway? I'm just glad you guys were in the area, he said. Same. I would say it was a coincidence, but given the size of Texas, I think it was a real miracle, laughed Death, digging into yet another turkey leg. I did find all of the screaming a bit distracted, said Alexei. Do you think that one guy recovered from the hoof to the head? I think he was okay, but he just kept blubbering under the face mask. I spoke with Dad after, and we're going to be delaying that for a bit. You know, coming back. Quite a long while. Such a long time. You know, I think they should have a good hard think about what they've done. Also, I know I should have come back in Jordan, but I had never been to Santa Fe. So yeah, we're pushing that back. Way, way back. And everyone nodded because that was very sensible. On that note, said Death, I wouldn't say I'm thankful given the honor or the horror of it all, but I am glad that Pestilence and I will have a chance to work together once more. I had hoped we could prolong our pseudo-retirement, but it seems we are to be pulled back into action, as it were. We cherish each other, not the circumstances. Obviously, I must clarify. But if I'm going to work upon this land, I'm glad to do it with a sister like you. This isn't like the last time, was it? Said War, spearing a carrot. Oh no, said Pestilence. But just as preventable, because no one ever learns, am I right? You know, between Washington just giving us carte blanche with rolling back everything and whatnot, Death and I are set to drop little reminders here and there. And in 2026, think tiny little gravestones and GoFundMe for cancer bills, you know, the usual. Throw in a Mommy and Me Facebook messaging board screaming about seed oils, no sugar, no fat, all organic diet, skipping vaccinations in basically all of Kentucky. You know, we're going to be just riding up and down this country for years to come. It is all very tragic, though. I take no joy in the little ones. I'm not a monster. I guess you could say I'm grateful for all that, perhaps, sighed Pestilence, swallowing a large forkful of stuffing. Speaking of stuffing, I smell pot. Anyway. War, is there anything that you would like to add? Famine ladled soup into a bowl and passed it to Jesus. War dabbed at the gravy in front of his sweatshirt, chewing the last bit of turkey. I am thankful for Alexei. He is an excellent page, not just to me, but for all of us. He keeps us anchored in the mortal world with reminders of our obligations. I suppose I should be thankful for what I would like to call the continuation of my services as official enforcer of the horrors, and all I bring with me, I guess. And no, I will not be going to Venezuela. They are doing that on their own. I do not do unpaid overtime. And I certainly will not be led by a raving alcoholic. If I want to be led by a parade of incompetence, I'll drag up whatever general hell will let me borrow for the occasion. Even they are more noble than bombing fishing boats. Tell us how you really feel. Jesus laughed, serving up flaky pastry and salmon pie on passed-around plates. I apologize, Alexei, for dragging everything out so much. I have become too much of a mascot. It is not like the old days. War waved his fork to the space beyond the dining room, and whatever extra space signified Alexei's ravaged homeland. Famine took a long sip of wine, which still hadn't run out, and squared her bony shoulders. I can't say I am particularly grateful for my rejuvenation. This isn't even a proper famine, a proper me. There's no drought, no vermin, no locusts, no flooding, just legislation and petty bickering. It is so deliberate as well, Famine almost shouted, shoving a deviled egg in her mouth and swallowing it like a snake. I haven't seen such deliberate starvation in decades. I mean, even Mao didn't think it would go so wrong, that they would know better. They know, but here we are. The disruption of the SNAP program had not been a total surprise for the four, but they had not expected it to manifest in their most generous sibling. Famine had grown taller, leaner, more of an emaciated starlet than Pennsylvania housekeeper. Her eyes looked larger in her thinning face, her teeth sharpened, she grew pale, and the air around her moved slightly, her fine hair moving with an unseen wind. Hunger always lurked in the corner of every empire, and this one, young and feral, was no exception. As household pantries emptied and fridges held more cold air than food, Famine felt faint ripples of maternal fear in the air and the vague cramp that came with an empty stomach. She looked more herself than she ever had in some time. And as she watched her family living in their final forms for longer and longer, Famine had hoped on some level she would be the exception, just for a little bit more. Her reach was long, but it passed over the cities and moved beyond the sea to places where help had vanished and storehouses held rotting supplies and food. The incompetence and waste was almost beyond her modern mind. Watching parents count coins at the local store, she tasted the bile of hunger sick for the first time in ages. Famine, are you okay? Pestilence has her by the shoulder. Somehow she has stood up, although she does not remember making the movements, and there is a bowl of cream in her hand. Oh my goodness, pardon me, I do not know where I went. Food coma, must be the turkey. Alexei, put on a pot of coffee, thank you. Now, who wants more pie? Thank you.
I am not saying I want to do it every month, but I like sitting down. It's very professorial. It feels a little on the nose to be doing this in this special Drunken Odyssey edition of Loose Lips, but give a hand for the most important person in the room, your bartender. I'm just like, they never know what they're going to be fucking in for. I think I'm going to use this quote forever when describing this night, and may have already. But John, none other than John King, fielded a comment from some rando who had wandered in here, and I think he summed up like what I imagine everybody who stumbles into this night not knowing what it was. John gave him what I can only imagine was a very good explanation, and then he said, "How is this a show?" Okay, that's fair. I don't know how it is, but I'm really glad you're all here tonight.
We have a microphone.
What? We have, exactly. That's what makes it a show, basically. You can do this too. You just, drink here long enough, basically. Our next reader, Shawn McKee, is a fictional character who first appears in Disney Animation's 1959 film, Sleeping Beauty. Shawn McKee is the self-proclaimed mistress of all evil, based on the wicked fairy character in Charles Perrault's fairy tale, Sleeping Beauty, as well as the villainess who appears in the Brothers Grimm's retelling of the story, Little Briar Rose. Nothing like the classics. Would you all please welcome Shawn McKee?
All right. Thank you all for being here. Really appreciate that. Glad to celebrate another successful year of Loose Lips. So Thank you to Todd and Diane for keeping this going. This has become almost a tradition at this point with Drunken Odyssey Takeover. So I was honored to read last year, and I'm just as honored to read this year as well. So, and keeping with certain themes, what did I do? What did I write? Well, the kind of story that when I finished it, I said, what am I doing with my life? Thank you, Jamie. So it's the holidays, right? So for me, that is a time for Christmas and holiday horror films. So few to note, there's Silent Night, Deadly Night, Black Christmas, Santa Evil, which has like 3 different names, but that's the one that stuck. And Krampus is another one, and countless others. So what I did was just write a little nod to those horror films, just to give you some context. So let's begin. It is called A Christmas Slasher Story. 3 unsolved murders had occurred in a relatively short span, mere weeks before Christmas. The police had no suspects. Local news was on the scene. The town was on edge. The Somerville murders were a direct assault on the serene image of a small, picturesque Florida town where community was everything. Desperate speculation swirled about the murderer or murderers responsible. It could be anyone, a friend, a neighbor, a demented drifter, or a professional assassin. The real answers were far more troubling than anyone could imagine. Initially, Mayor Levine, the boisterous, silver-haired, Hawaiian shirt-wearing former real estate developer, well into his 3rd term, chalked up the murders as possible animal attacks. I know we've had a problem with coyote attacks in this town for some time, he announced at a local press conference. The mutilation of these victims suggests something of an animalistic nature. The public largely disagreed. Those who supported his theory were likely experiencing a degree of denial. Coyote attacks had increased against house pets, cats mainly, but they were little threat to people. In response, the mayor suggested that the coyotes might have been genetically modified with human characteristics. I've seen crazier things, he said, smiling to the camera. You can count on that. The holidays were supposed to be cheery and bright. It was a time when the same songs echoed through every shopping center intercom, like Andy Williams' It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year. A time when people were a little nicer to each other, where breakdancing Salvation Army bell ringers dazzled shoppers with their exhilarating moves, which happens. There was no better time for giving. There was also no better time for purchasing. Amazon electric delivery vans were everywhere, winding through neighborhoods to meet the holiday rush of constant online orders. Except for the murders, it was business as usual in Somerville. The first victim, Ronnie Codwell, was a 45-year-old welder found bludgeoned to death with a candy cane lodged into his left ear. Ronald, or Ronnie, lived roughly 5 miles from the scene of the crime. Authorities concluded that he had been out for a walk. The second victim, Sally Perkins, a 33-year-old school teacher, was discovered by a couple walking their dog. Her body lay in a wooded area not far from a construction site, strangled to death by Christmas lights. The third and most heinous murder involved 56-year-old local tailor Hector Rivera. He was found lying against a tree with his insides torn out and tree ornaments decorating his body. Sheriff Clyde Barrett hadn't seen anything like it. We've got a real animal on the loose, he told homicide investigators as they tried to piece their scant evidence together. A single boot print not far from Hector's body had been discovered amid faint tire tracks below a nearby overpass. The sheriff shone his flashlight onto the tracks and made the call. Looks like they come from one of those Amazon vans running all over town. They took pictures, roped off the area, and returned to the station for coffee and donuts. Following news of the second victim, the Somerville PD was forced to publicly apologize after it was disclosed that they had been placing bets on who the deranged killer might be. While their actions could be considered callous or indifferent, the department maintained that they had to find some amusement when working during the holidays. Outrage subsided once celebrations commenced for the annual tree lighting ceremony and public vigil. "I vow that there will be no more murders," the mayor boldly declared. "Local law enforcement is closing in on the culprit as we speak, whether it be a human, a coyote, or a hybrid of both." Sensing disapproving murmurs within the crowd, the mayor grabbed an acoustic guitar and initiated a sing-along to Jingle Bell Rock. He steadily won them back as Sheriff Barrett approached and whispered into his ear, "Sir, they just found another body about 2 miles up the road near Brewster Park." Nick Peterson was an Amazon driver who lived in a cozy cottage with his wife, Mary. Somerville, Florida was a stark change from up north, where they had braced the harshest winters. They sought a warmer place to retire in peace, though they still had to find ways to make ends meet. What started out as a part-time job soon became a more committed vocation. Nick drove his delivery van day and night in a never-ending cycle. He dropped off packages, took pictures of boxes, and then raced on to the next house. Though the hours were long, he took pride in his work and never complained. "I delivered some great toys today," he boasted to his wife. "Reminded me of the good old days." He delighted in bringing people joy, even when it arrived in the form of an Amazon box. With his heavy-set frame and bushy white beard, people often thought he looked like Santa Claus. They were righter than they knew. Before settling in Somerville, Nick went by several names: St. Nicholas, Kris Kringle, and yes, Santa Claus. He had resided in the North Pole for ages with his wife and a dedicated staff of toy-making elves. His factory crafted thousands of toys, all personally delivered aboard his reindeer-drawn sleigh. He had weathered countless toy crazes over the decades, from the arrival of Barbie and Cabbage Patch Kids to Furbies, Beanie Babies, and other iconic fads. Unable to compete with major toy manufacturers, Santa adapted his business model to keep up with the times, even though profits were scarce. The rise of Amazon ultimately brought an end to his enterprise. After moving to Florida, he hung up his Santa suit for good and joined the competition, changing his name to Nick Peterson. With the holiday season in full effect, Nick worked long hours delivering packages all over town. The monotony slowly wore him down. He attempted to brighten his mood with some Christmas music. He turned on the radio and was met with a deluge of AI-generated songs. The artificial variations of holiday classics grated on his nerves. It was the first time he felt anger toward the world, his lost profession, and the abundance of automation all around them. Something had to give. The notifications on his phones acted as triggers. Several of his deliveries throughout the week had been reported as stolen. Customer complaints had reached an all-time high. Nick couldn't fathom the idea of stealing. One evening, he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling as his wife pressed him on. "You haven't been yourself lately," she said. "What's wrong? It's your favorite time of year." "They call them porch pirates," Nick replied, "stealing packages right off people's doorsteps." He turned to her in disbelief. "Have you ever heard of such a thing?" "Goodness, that's terrible," she said, removing her Christmas-themed scrunchie. Her long gray hair draped her shoulders. She kissed him on the cheek and turned off a nearby lamp. Nick continued to stare at the ceiling well into the night. The first incident was purely by chance. Nick had skipped several deliveries to patrol neighborhoods and prevent the injustice he believed had befallen the town. Then he saw it, in the distance, a man absconding with a fresh delivery. The thief bolted from the porch and ran up the sidewalk, slowing only when he thought the coast was clear. Nick trailed with his headlights off. He slammed the gas just as the thief darted across the road. The vehicle struck the man without warning, sending him flying. Blood splattered across the front bumper. The stolen package sailed across the road as a man landed on the pavement with a thud. Nick pulled to the side, got out, and dragged the unconscious man off the road. For a moment, he contemplated calling the police. Then he saw the crumpled package across the way and was filled with rage. He placed a boot on the man's head and jammed a candy cane into his ear. Blood sprayed from the wound and onto Nick's face. He rushed to the van and opened a box of wet wipes. The second incident involved a woman who just couldn't resist the lure of an Amazon package in the open. He tracked her through the park and strangled her with Christmas lights. The third incident was a rash decision on Nick's part. He saw a man carelessly kick over a Santa display. Or maybe he tripped over it. I don't know. Either way, the man had to go. The fourth and final victim of Nick's reign of terror saw their end at the blade of an axe. Nick furiously chopped the man to pieces under an overcast evening sky. The man was a jogger Nick had mistakenly believed to be a loathsome porch pirate. By the time he finished, he realized there wasn't a stolen package in sight. "What have I done?" he asked, heavily out of breath. He stepped back and nearly slipped on all the organs and blood. His Amazon uniform was drenched. The righteous satisfaction he normally got from dispatching thieves was absent. He fled the scene shortly after, leaving the butchered body of the jogger in the middle of the road. He drove around the block in a daze with his van full of undelivered packages. He glanced at the wallet-sized photo of his wife, Mrs. Claus, affixed to his windshield visor, and felt immense sadness. He could never go back from this. Police lights suddenly flashed from behind his van. Startled, Nick looked at his rear camera monitor. A brief siren emitted, signaling him to pull over. Nick's black-gloved hands gripped the steering wheel. The bloody axe lay at his feet. He gunned it forward, leaving a trail of dust. A line of police cars steadily formed behind him, their lights flashing wildly. Up ahead, he saw a ravine. He increased his speed and drove the van off-road through weeds, rocks, and dust. Sirens blared into the night. He called out, "On Dasher, on Dancer, on Prancer, Vixen, and Comet," just as a van crashed through a guardrail and launched into the darkness of the cold ravine below. The end. Thank you.
I guess this is a good time to ask, how was everybody's Thanksgiving? Like collectively by murmur or, or woo? Yeah. Awesome. Mine too. I participated in what I hope is not going to become a tradition is I think I went through the entire fucking Netflix catalog of shitty romantic movies that have a sort of a Christmas supernatural theme going on them. I'm going to say Hot Frosty because I know that one title. But there was another fucking one where it's like, it's a imminently to be married couple, but the woman has not told her paramour that she is the daughter of Santa Claus, and that he inherits the mantle of Santa Claus if they get married. He's got to go through all that and like compete with Jack Frost, the competition love interest. I'm here for this like new era of trash cinema. It's like the new Sharknado, like absolutely low effort, just content dump that they're going to do every year, and I love it. I like gouge my own eyes out, but then later on, I get these great stories and like, no, they did not make that movie. Anyway, so this is also the time where I ask how y'all doing. We're more than halfway through. Oh, that good. Oh, my God. All right. The home stretch is a very good home stretch indeed, because our next reader, Samantha Nickerson, is a fictional character and the main antagonist of Walt Disney Pictures' animated film Beauty and the Beast, voiced by American actor and singer Richard White. Samantha is an arrogant and ruthless hunter whose unrequited feelings for the intellectual Belle drive her to murder her adversary, the Beast, once she realizes she cares for him instead. Samantha serves as a foil personality to the beast, who was once as vain as Samantha prior to his transformation. I did not need that level of analysis, Wikipedia. All right, Samantha Nickerson, everybody, give her a hand.
This piece is titled Genocide with a Bic Pen. Write about it, my friends say. You have a unique perspective. But I wouldn't know. I'm so ashamed of a Jewish identity that I tattooed over a Hebrew tattoo. The tattoo was Hebrew font, an Arabic word, an entire language colonized and branded into my skin. 6 years ago, I went to Israel, a free trip the week after I finished undergrad, a relief, a vacation, an awakening. All Jews welcome, regardless of religious beliefs, the girl at the tent outside of the student union said. I knew nothing about conflict, colonization, occupation. I had heard of Palestine, but I had also heard of Pakistan, and I did not know the difference. The map of the earth in my mind blurred east of Italy, a figurative allspice of foreign dreams. I wanted to travel. I had no money. Israel knows this about American youth. I had to do a phone interview with our trip leader, the extent of their vetting. She asked me why I wanted to go to Israel. My grandma is Jewish, and she's the strongest person I've ever met. She's had a hard life, but she's not bitter. Somehow she's still happy, while no one else in my family is. The only difference between her and the rest of us is her involvement at the temple. She has a support system, lifelong friends, and a sense of connection and pride. She raised my mom, but my mom has no interest in Judaism. My dad is Christian. My mom told him, do whatever you want with the kids, and my dad said, you're going to believe in Jesus. Which I did, until I was 12 or so and had questions the church couldn't answer. Then it fell apart and left my mind a pit of claws all day. At night, I rested on a bed of knives, my adolescence less a prickle and more a stab. My grandma had a brain tumor removed recently, and she can't talk like she used to. The comfort of conversation with her is gone. I need to understand her better, and she can't explain herself, so the next best thing is going to a country of people who have similar beliefs as her. I'm hoping to visit Israel and learn how my grandma manages to live peacefully. Okay, the trip leader said, you've mentioned your grandma a lot, but why do you want to go? And that's when I knew I didn't like her very much. What did she want from me? I didn't know how else to answer her question, but honestly, so I basically repeated myself. In hindsight, she probably wanted me to spout some Zionist taglines, but I cannot stress my innocence enough. Pakistan was not an exaggeration. Whatever, I was an unmarried young Jew, and she approved my application anyway. The general public has some idea of what birthright, or taglit in Hebrew is, a free tour of Israel for young Jews. The wise public understands that the trip is propaganda disguised as a vacation. My itinerary. Monday, flight. Tuesday, welcome to Israel, building Jewish futures. One people, different lands. Tel Aviv tour, Tel Aviv and Jaffa. Lunch, graffiti tour, drive north to Galilee. Check into hotel, garden estate boutique. Dinner. Welcome to Israel, orientation, security briefing, and icebreakers. 7 soldiers were assigned to our trip. There without weapons, there to convince us how fun their country was. Cooped up for 2 years, only the lucky few applicants from the IDF get to take this little vacation. I heard once that only those deemed attractive enough are approved. A few nights in, one of the men showed up at our hotel room door, knocked, and we 3 girls opened it. He had a condom in one hand and just said, please? Wednesday, Yom HaZikaron, Israel Memorial Day. Traditions and mystics, dreams and reality in Tzfat. Return to hotel for dinner. Join Israel in celebrating its 71st Independence Day. Gravesites and tears. Flowers for sale. Hysterical families gathered around graves decades old. At night, school children's choreographed performance, draft beer, fireworks that startled the locals into screams, mothers shoving children to the ground. Me, stunned, wondering why they were afraid of fireworks. Thursday, synthesis of geopolitics, nature, and history. Breakfast at the hotel, banyas, Golan Heights at the Syrian border, and Mount Meron, a day of hiking. Lunch, rafting on the Jordan River. Dinner at the Jordan River. Return to hotel. Hillel conversation. What is your Israel story? Friday, Jerusalem, the people, the stories, the stones. Breakfast and check out of hotel, drive south to Jerusalem. Celebration, Old City of Jerusalem, the Jewish quarter, check into hotel and prepare for Shabbat, Kabbalah Shabbat, festive Shabbat dinner at the hotel, Oneg Shabbat with stories, singing and food. Overnight, Rimonim Hotel, Jerusalem. I didn't know Shabbat was a day of rest or the rules. The more religious Jews followed, turning off their phones and refusing electricity for the day. When a boy I'd made friends with secluded himself in his room and nobody could get him to answer a text, I thought he'd killed himself. Saturday, Shabbat morning programs, festive Shabbat lunch, bar/bat mitzvah ceremony, tie-in session, Yad Vashem, Holocaust Museum. Preparation, Shabbat, rest, Havdalah, night out in Jerusalem, Ben Yehuda. An impromptu bat mitzvah, the Jewish coming-of-age ceremony for any adults who hadn't been raised particularly religious. They wanted me to participate, but it felt somehow phony. I politely declined, citing shyness, citing unreadiness, scenting bullshit. Sunday, remembering the past, understanding the future. Breakfast at the hotel, Holocaust Museum processing. Mahane Yehuda Market, Mount Herzl National Cemetery, return to the hotel, dinner. Presentation, Living Jewish, Avraham Infield, who spat all over the first 2 rows. A day of heartbreak. A morning viewing stolen shoes, journals behind glass cases, railway cars inside a building. Then a trip to the cemetery, where they took us to the graves of people our age, younger, told us their stories, and at one read us the letter his girlfriend had read at his funeral. Followed immediately by a Zionist presentation calling us to join the army. Monday, Jewish people, heartbreaks and triumphs. Breakfast and check out of the hotel, geopolitical update, which I remember none of because I was developing food poisoning from Jerusalem's finest dinner. Beit Guvrin, lunch, diversity program, Amal Afawi, Lakia, drive towards Arad, overnight Kfar Hanokdim, Bedouin encampment, hello conversation, what is spirituality to you? That was an educational visit to a Bedouin home. A woman prepared us homemade tea and told us about her life, and I always wondered if she was paid or oppressed or what her situation was. Why was she the one who was educating us, and why was this the only Arab person we interacted with the entire time? Tuesday, building blocks of nationhood, Masada as a case study. Rise and shine to a new beautiful day in the Judean desert with breakfast, Masada, lunch, Dead Sea, drive to Tel Aviv, check into hotel, dinner at a Lebanese restaurant, enjoy a night out in the vibrant nightlife of the city that never sleeps, Tel Aviv. Overnight, Leonardo City Tower. Masada was a hike during a heat wave to the mountaintop ruins of an ancient city where legend has it that Jewish men killed their wives and children, then committed suicide, rather than be taken by the invading Roman army. The tour guide asked us if we would have made the same choice. No, I said. I would allow myself to be taken. I would learn the language. I would hope to appeal to an empathetic guard or a woman with some influence. I would hope to eventually escape. The other girls looked at me like I was a traitor. Wednesday, Tel Aviv, the first Hebrew city. Breakfast and check out of the hotel, Taglit Innovation Center. Free time in Tel Aviv. Lunch, visit the beach in Tel Aviv for some fun and relaxation, surfing and stand-up paddleboard lessons at Tel Aviv's best surfing club. Check into hotel, dinner, hello conversation. Who is Israel to you? Overnight, Harlington Hotel in Ashkelon. Thursday, breakfast at the hotel, Ein of Dat National Park. Lunch, biking tour through Sde Boker, which means morning field. Return to hotel followed by dinner, closing conversation and written feedback, and a meeting summary conversation. Friday, early checkout and drive to airport. Now, a trained mind would see the careful placement of cultural lessons interlaced with fun activities, woven like a torn Palestinian kufiya. I was caught off guard. I can tell you that it felt like when you think you're about to have a fun hookup, but the guy has a cock way bigger than you expected, and every thrust hurts, the kind of hurt that sends you to a small space within yourself, spine involuntarily bunching. At a rest stop near the West Bank, I smelled smoke so acrid that I choked and choked and choked. I thought I would die, but after a few minutes, the breeze shifted and suddenly I had fresh air. I learned later that the smoke was homes burning, geographically near, politically so distant that if I'd known to ask, is this true, the tour guide would have lied to me. In the following years, I shed that ignorance. I understand America's part far more than complicity in the Palestinian genocide. I understand the power of my vote, and I refuse to commit genocide with a big pen. And what I think of as my coming out post, I wrote, some of my Jewish friends will hate me for posting this, and to that I say we are not friends. If you're mad, that means your priority is Zionism, not Judaism. If your perceived experience of the strength of your relationship with your version of God depends on your ability to go hang out in Israel while millions across the fence starve to death, you have a very tenuous connection to your Judaism. How can you be taught your entire life to practice peace, independent thought, and empathy, then disregard that because of a sense of nationalism? Your ancestors managed to be Jewish in the diaspora for millennia. You don't need the geographical area of Israel to do so. I feel so ashamed to be associated with Israel and have no control over that association because I can't edit my genes and become un-Jewish. So this is my official denunciation of any belief in Zionism and my official fuck you to anyone who defends the genocide and Holocaust of the Palestinian people. Shame on all of you. And I have gladly lost a dozen friends. Free Palestine.
So, yeah, if I was going to plug the Drunken Odyssey, and what better time, I would say there's a really good chance you could see John and Samantha talking shit about / critiquing the super fucking problematic early black and white cartoons of Mickey Mouse, if that's what you're into. I don't want to watch those cartoons ever again. There's also, if you ever wanted to see Diane, our regular co-host, and I read poems drunker than we've ever been, John facilitated that and made sure that it lives forever now on the internet. So yeah, there's some really good poems. Diane on Fire by Fire by Fire casts some spells. John exorcises demons of his childhood. I read the fucking Hulk poem and then tell a great story about a poem that I don't read on air. It's great. It's better than that sounds by a magnitude of at least 2.5 times. So, with that, we've come to your final reader. Oh my God, it's almost like I sort of thematically timed that. Drunken host, Jesus Christ, no, that's me. Drunken Odyssey host and your final reader, John King. Is it? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, man. Is a large burlap sack full of bugs and the main antagonist of The Nightmare Before Christmas. John King did not appear in Tim Burton's original poem, but Burton later sketched a portrait of what appeared to be a potato sack man with horrible things inside. The John King puppet was 2 feet high, twice the height of the other puppets. Ken Page claims that he based his performance as John King as somewhere between Bert Lahr in The Wizard of Oz and the voice of the demon in The Exorcist. I don't think I have to go any further. Would you all please welcome the man of the hour, John King?
Thank you all for coming out. And, all right. So as you can hear, my voice is a bit shredded. I've got a cold, so the kissing festival for afterward is... We'll just have to limit our activities to Fight Club, okay? So, by the way, thank you to Ray for rescuing my book from Fusion Fest. Guy Psycho and the Ziggurat Shame came out in 2019. And yeah, my publisher occasionally asks, where the fuck is the next book? I've written chapter 1. I just need to figure out what goes in the next 23 chapters. And it's all set. Jamie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So it's really imminent. So please give a round of applause to all the readers who've come before me. They have been... I exploit all my friends for labor. And so the Drunken Odyssey, if it was just me, it would have ended probably like a year and a half in. And we've been going since summer of 2012, which is fucking bonkers. So thank you all for being here. All right. And speaking of longevity, in 2016, the Loose Lips reading series was created for Orlando writers to gather and drink and write a little something inspired by the news. The reality television clown did not yet cast a shadow over all our political realities. 9 years later, the shadow still darkens our reality. Most of us are paying less attention to current events out of self-care. The avalanche upon avalanche upon avalanche of gross stupidity and evil and greed and craven lies and insanity and gaslighting and grotesque bad taste and documentaries of Melania Trump are no diet for a human who can imagine a tomorrow worth living in. Our zone is flooded with infinite shit, blessed be Steve Bannon. The piece you're hearing now is meant to heal us for the times to come. As difficult as this prospect is, we need to imagine not just a future for ourselves, but for our political opponents. Note, on the day that Marjorie Taylor Greene announced her resignation from the House of Representatives, someone at the White House was listening to the soundtrack to Phantom of the Opera at 140 decibels. An act which demolished the East Wing of the White House. We are not the only ones hurting. Despite my vow to myself to only skim the news for highlights I might need to act on, I've delved, dear listeners. As the followers of Q would say, I've conducted research. When the president claimed recently that he deserved a Nobel Prize, most of us in this room scoffed. You know you did. But in 2026, he will receive the Nobel Prize for peace, not from the Nobel Committee, but from instead the more prestigious Canadian Football League. And we should all celebrate this prize not on behalf of our modest leader, but on behalf of all humanity. Donald Trump has ended 8 wars. Out of modesty, when asked what these 8 wars might be, the president usually declines to answer, so I will answer for him. These are the 8 pieces of Donald Trump. First, he has ended the hostilities between the nation of Ukraine and its bordering neighbor, the aggressive rogue nation of Paraguay. Second, he ceased the struggle between Star Trek and Star Wars, as no one really cares about these franchises anymore. Thank you, Alex Kurtzman and Kathleen Kennedy, for your assistance in this matter. Third, Donald Trump has ended the war between his left hand and his right hand. We wish his hands a speedy recovery. Fourth, he ended the conflict between reality and super reality. No questions. Fifth, he ended the millennia-long animus between werewolves and leprechauns. I'm still shocked at how little credit he receives for that miracle. Sixth, he terminated hostilities between Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s angry penis. Beef tallow was somehow involved in that piece, for which we are grateful. Hashtag not all Kennedys. Seventh, Donald Trump formed tranquil relations at long last between Godzilla and Mechagodzilla. And eighth, hey, did you know that Kim Kardashian didn't pass the California bar exam? This is exceptionally difficult news to bear since multiple psychics predicted that she would pass the bar. What will our legal system do without her? How can the scientific community go on when its psychics go so sideways with their prognostications? Can these scientists be sued? If only Kim Kardashian could sue them herself, but she didn't pass the bar. Let's start a petition. Oh, do you remember when Megyn Kelly tried to, Jeffrey Epstein's pedophilia? If we of a country have no standards for our news, and if we continue to regard stupidity as sacred rather than a flaw to be criticized, then I really worry about who will we elect next, if indeed we keep having elections. I don't mind telling jokes as I'm executed by our secret police, if that is my fate. Maybe that was my plan A all along. I didn't expect us to get here so soon. Democrats are forever unpopular despite their policies being popular. Maybe Democrats should act more with conviction and stop hugging Liz Cheney and apologizing for craven billionaires and stop avoiding being mean to Republicans who support fascism. I don't know. I probably don't know what I'm talking about. Merry Christmas. Oh, the 8th piece of Donald Trump is between Dr. Seuss and Rankin Bass. All right. Get a drink, hug a friend, know I love you.
I am sincerely hoping he will edit out or at least truncate my, ramblings. But it's been a really great night. I know, I get one fucking bye and that's it. But it really has been a great night. Thank you guys all for coming. Again, I'm genuinely surprised every month that you all want to relive the news in fiction or otherwise. We're going to be doing it again, a whole other year. First Tuesday in January, we've got Ryan Rivas, we've got Caitlin Cherniak, and I'll be completely honest, the list is wide open. So the best way to get a spot on our rigorous vetting process for Loose Lips is to come up to me, on my third beer, which is about to happen imminently, and say, hey, I got some shit, and you're in, like Flynn. So in the meantime, go and listen to the entire back catalog of The Drunken Odyssey. Like John says, hug each other, go home, get laid, and it was great to see you all tonight. Good night.